Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to everybody, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you for joining us at the Payoneer Beyond conference. And today, in this panel, we're going to be talking about tools to help scale your small business. And we've gathered together some experts in their fields. Some of them create the tools that people use, SMBs use all over the world. And have some really fantastic insights and suggestions to help you scale and grow your business. So I'd like to introduce the panel that we've got here today. So just starting with Rosalyn at the top.
Yeah, hi, I'm Rosalyn Gladwin from Gladwin Legal, experts in retail and e-commerce law.
Thank you. Duncan.
Duncan McIntyre, Head of Sales for Canva in the Asia-Pac region.
Thank you. Adam.
Hi, everyone. Adam Noonan. I'm the Marketing Director at Envato.
And Jason.
Hi, team. I'm Jason Leong, the CEO and co-founder at PocketSmith, and we make money management software.
Thanks, Jason. So what we're going to do is start with a couple of questions. And for the audience out there, if you do have any questions, please feel free to either A, type them in the chat, or B, send them in the Q&A, and we'll attempt to get to as many of them as possible throughout the course of this panel. As we all know, COVID-19, the pandemic has impacted the world significantly. And it's obviously really transitioned and impacted SMBs all around the world. And what I wanted to know from the panel is really, are you guys seeing a growth in the number of SMBs with people, maybe leaving their permanent work for the permanent work that they were working in the workforce? Or is there more of a transition to flexible work as well? So I'd love to get your thoughts on that. Let's start with Adam.
Sure. I think, firstly, just a little bit about Envato to give some context to this. So we operate some digital marketplaces where people can sell or buy digital assets or digital creative assets to do a range of digital projects. So graphic templates, web templates, video templates, or stock audio, stock video, photos, those kinds of things. So SMBs are a really large and important part of our business. And I think some of the changes that we've seen at Envato probably give some indication of that. So recently, we've seen some growth at Envato, and we think obviously a lot of that is to do with the changes that SMBs are seeing at the moment. So I think from that, a couple of trends that we've picked up on is, I think one, obviously people moving a lot more into online as they've either had to sort of pivot or adapt to what they're actually doing. And that could be from a product point of view for a lot around building new websites or making enhancements to their websites, through to communicating a lot more on online as well. So creating a lot of marketing collateral as part of that. So we're seeing that there's obviously been a shift towards that. And then I also think that there's obviously a lot of people who unfortunately have been really negatively impacted by the global events, who might be now looking at actually starting a new business for the first time as well, and actually looking to address some of the challenges that come with that. So I think there's certainly been a lot of changes for SMBs, for those that were already in that space, and also for those who are now moving into that because of certainly the changed circumstances.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I think one of the key words you mentioned is pivot. There's a lot of people doing that at the moment and working out how to do it. Jason, what are you guys seeing from a PocketSmith perspective, or just in general? What are your thoughts?
And just an interesting stat was in the news the other day. Just here in New Zealand, we've seen more new businesses created this quarter than when compared to the similar period over the last 5 years. So, this could be as a result of people losing their jobs as impacted by COVID and moving on to becoming, entrepreneurs in their own right. But anecdotally as well, we've encountered, and you guys would have as well in your travels, I'd imagine, people who are just reevaluating what's important to them just because of COVID and the lockdown. I think it's given people quite a bit of time to ruminate on their situations. And so they might be tired of the grind. They want to focus on what's important in their lives. And as such, they've decided to strike out on their own, which seems counterintuitive when the environment is so unpredictable at present. But that's certainly what we're seeing. So as software, we help people manage multiple streams of income. So we've been seeing a gradual shift from people who are just doing the 9 to 5 to adopting a more of a future of work type perspective on earning. So, the 60% on the main job, 30% on a side hustle, and then a 10% on a passion project. So the world is moving that way anyway. I think COVID's just accelerated it quite a lot.
That's really interesting about the shift in the percentages as well, in terms of the side hustles, that, people that have that side hustle on the side. And Duncan, from your perspective, are you guys seeing much in terms of, an increase in authors and creators, and, SMBs, are they growing? Are there more of them out there?
Yeah, to give you a bit of context as to what my team and I are actually responsible for, we actually work with various sizes of organisations, right from SMBs and sole traders through to large corporations. And so, much along the lines of what Adam was talking about before, I think the way in which businesses are communicating has kind of shifted, right? I think businesses have had to adopt new ways of communicating and new ways of running their own business that may be traditionally in person, right? And so I think that when you talk about how have they changed, I think that the flexible work arrangements is certainly something we are seeing, and that's where I think people are looking for tools, not just to communicate with their customers, but to collaborate with their teams as well, right? They're looking at new ways to drive that collaboration. And so I think that the flexible work arrangements is probably the biggest shift I have seen. In terms of the volume of people we are seeing, using Canva and engaging with Canva, we have seen that increase as people are on the lookout for those new tools. And so I think that's probably the biggest shift we have seen, is just that increase in digital communication, social communication to their customers, and then looking for new ways to collaborate internally with their teams.
Yeah, thanks. That's really good. I like the collaboration. That's kind of critical. It's really, really important, especially for businesses to succeed. And Rosalyn, you're at the coalface dealing with SMBs on a daily basis. They're trying to grow, they're trying to expand, and obviously they need legal support. But are you seeing more entities being started up, like people trying to create those businesses? Like, what are you seeing?
Yeah, and I think it's really amazing, because what we're going to see is some really incredible quality ones, because you're going to have, you've got all these really talented people who they've maybe been stood down, or they've been told, you don't have a job anymore, or maybe they were, freelancing before and they were a little bit quiet, so they've started up their passion project. And it's not just someone who maybe couldn't get a job, or who was kind of like, oh, I'll give it a go. These are really good quality top people who are saying, I used to do store design, and now I'm going to set up this incredible passion project that I've been dreaming about for years. I had my first 2 months of COVID off to kind of, have a bit of downtime, have a bit of chill, see what was going to happen. And then they've gone, these people who are high achievers and incredible at what they do, they're not going to sit still for the next, what are we in October now? So they've had the whole year to be ruminating about these projects, working on them. And now they're kind of at that stage where they're all ready to launch. Like, if you'd asked me this question a month ago, it would have been a different answer. But in the last month even, I've seen, everything from online businesses to, businesses involving pets and animals, to fashion and clothing, to new marketplaces coming up that just would not have been, even thought of before, because these people were stuck in full-time jobs and wouldn't have had that incentive to go off and, have a leap of faith in their skills.
That's really, really interesting, especially as you mentioned, the last month, there's been a lot more SMBs, or people starting these businesses. And with a lot more people starting businesses, a lot of them aren't necessarily aware of a lot of the challenges that come with starting a new business. So I'd love to get your thoughts, everyone, on what you see as some of the, the main challenges, and even the considerations that someone needs to have when running a small business. Jason, we might start with you this time. What do you think?
So we've been through exactly that. We've run that gauntlet, having founded our own business, and underestimated the sheer amount of time that it would take to get it up and running. So managing work-life balance is probably the number one challenge that most people don't anticipate. Because the dream is to have flexibility when you're running your own business, and thinking, well, I'm just gonna work half the day and spend the other half doing my laundry and drinking pina coladas in my backyard. But so the dreams have that flexibility, but the small businesses will consume all of our time, and particularly if it's a passion project, you're gonna love doing it. But this can't come at the expense of your other relationships as well. So I guess that the key thing is to just keep a beat on it. And to have a plan and systems to keep you posted as to how you're doing. And financial stress is another one as well, because starting a new business, as you guys can understand, it's super unpredictable. So there's got to be a way for, and there are products out there, ours included, to just make sure that you keep your financial stress in check and to understand where you're headed.
Yeah, that financial stress part is really critical, especially cash flow. So I might come back to you in a little bit and ask you a few questions about that. Rosalyn, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, Jason, those points were incredibly spot on about, time management and being able to delineate a bit. But also, I think it's about planning and thinking about really what is needed for your business. So one of the issues that I'm seeing is, the businesses will come, they don't necessarily have a plan. They've got this great idea. We work with them, to strategize all the legal aspects, but it's also about where they want to go for their business. So they really need at the beginning to think about, is this a business that they want to sit and run for the next 20 years? Is this a business that they want to get investors in to help run with them? Or is it something that they're looking to build as big as they can, as quickly as they can, and then sell, make some money and do something else? And so I think part of it is really working out what you want to do as a new business, startup, SMB, to understand where you want to go, because that will then dictate the steps. So for example, if you're looking to raise money and get investors in, then you need to make your business as profitable, look at your cap table, look at all the kind of setup foundation things, so that when someone's coming in a year's time, it's going to maximize your chance to get less dilution and get as much money in as you can. So I think that's one issue. There's so many different things. Yeah. I could talk about it for hours.
No, it's definitely a good point, specifically around that strategy around, what is your aim for the business? Are you looking to sell? Are you looking to keep it? That's really key that a lot of people don't necessarily think of when they're building the business. Duncan, what do you see from your perspective?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I couldn't agree more with some of the points that were raised already. I think, Jason, you mentioned the work-life balance. I think that's probably something we all need to keep in check, right, when working from home. But just to Rosalyn's point around that long-term planning, I think thinking about, I guess, not only where the business is today, but where you'd like it to be in sort of 12, 24, 48 months, and really thinking about what are those business systems and processes that are not only going to be suitable for you today, but also see you through and scale as you grow that business. Something that might be good for you as a sole trader might not be good for you as a team of 10 people. And so, I think thinking about what those systems are that are going to help you enable and fuel that growth is really, really important. And the earlier you can get them in place, the better, I think.
Thanks, Duncan. Yep, that makes a lot of sense as well, and it's definitely a critical point. And Adam, what do you think?
Yeah, what we hear a lot about our SMB customers and also sellers on our websites, who are often sort of almost like SMBs themselves, is that just the sheer, I guess, not just the volume of work, which Jason obviously has experience of going through that process recently, but the breadth of the different types of work as well. So, your core capabilities might be within product development, but now you're expected to be able to be a marketer, to be on top of your accounting, and to, even in the early stages, figure out what the growth strategy is to kind of get things off the ground and get traction. And then if things are fortunately going well, how do you actually scale that successfully? So there's just this huge breadth of skills and capabilities that are required. And I think what we hear a lot about is that, one, how people are able to sort of upskill in those different areas and learn more about that. But also, I think equally importantly is, what are the areas that are actually going to have the most impact on their business at particular points in time? Maybe it's less about product and more about marketing at that specific time, or vice versa. So I think that there's some of the challenges that run with it. But I think the exciting part about it now, I think more than ever, is there's access to a lot of companies or a lot of talent around in this sort of global workforce that can help people through that in a way that could be, quicker or more affordable than what they may have previously thought as well.
Mm-hmm. And you made a good point there, Adam, as well, around skills. In terms of what skills are required. I think that's really, really important, and people need to, obviously research and try and upskill as much as they can, specific based on their strategy. And one of the skills I think that's kind of important in terms of a small business is really around design and branding, and what is the importance of that for a small business. And so just as a bit of a segue into that type of a question. So Duncan, I'd love to understand, why do you think good design and branding is really important for small businesses? And do you think there's sort of an easy way for businesses to, maybe review their own assets, to decide if they needed a refresh, or, and what should a business consider when, selecting which tools to use to help them create good content?
Oh, big question.
Yeah, it's a big question.
Very, very, very big question. I guess when I think about sort of good branding and design for small businesses, the thing that kind of springs to mind is that your brand and your design is your first touch point that a customer is going to have with your business. That's what for the most part they'll be creating that connection with is that brand image and that brand perception. And so I think, when you think about building that brand over time, I think one thing that springs to my mind is consistency, and consistency of how your brand is not only represented but perceived in the public. I think when you're thinking as a small business about scaling your operation, I spoke before about finding systems that are going to help you enable and fuel that growth. I think one thing that can happen as we see businesses grow is that sometimes those systems and processes of content creation start to let a business down, and sometimes what can happen is that content creation can get a little bit out of hand, and you start to see a brand get diluted. You start to see different brand representations out there in market. Consumers start to lose that connection with the brand, whether it might be different logos being used, whether it might be different colors being used, or different brand images being used as well. And so I think, when you think about that over time, that consistency is really key. And I think the larger an organization gets, the harder it gets to actually wrap your arms around that control and that consistency. So I think that's one thing that kind of springs to mind first and foremost for me about sort of why it's important. Thinking about the other aspects of your question there, one of them was about tools.
Yeah, so I guess the next stage, or before you jump to that, is what about emotional connection? Is that important as well from a brand design perspective? In terms of making sure that the customer has that connection to the brand?
Yeah, look, it's a really interesting conversation. I know Adam's certainly a marketing director, so can speak to this probably more so than I can. But I think that emotional connection is a really important one, right? And people often talk about customers don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And so I think that's something that needs to be present in that marketing and present in your brand messaging. Is what are your values as an organization, and what is that emotional connection that consumers are going to have to your brand and your company and what it stands for. So yeah, absolutely, I think that is an important aspect.
Well, seeing as you referenced Adam, I'll come back to you on the tools one if you're okay with that. The second part of that question, and jump to Adam. And did you want to add anything there, Adam, in terms of that emotional connection, given that you've got you can put your marketing hat on and
yeah, sure,
fire up a little bit and let rip.
Look, I think it's important for small business or any business, but for a small business, I think at a minimum it helps people look professional and obviously be able to compete with others in the marketplace. And again, that's what's exciting about where we are today, that a small business can go out and use some of the products that we represent here and present themselves in a similar way that a large organization with significantly deeper pockets and resources can do as well. So I know at Envato, we have customers that are Fortune 500 customers, but also just small SMBs and people who are running really small businesses or teams of one. And they're often using the same types of digital assets as well. So I think it kind of, at a minimum level, it enables you to get up to that kind of required look of professionalism that you need. And then building on Duncan's point, I think as you go beyond that, if you do that well, you build that connection with your customers and prospects, and you can use that really as a way to differentiate yourself and your product, and also reinforce whatever your position is, which as an SMB is going to be critical, that you need to be really clear on what your positioning is and how that fits within what is often a crowded marketplace, and sometimes with a lot of more mature products within there as well. So I think the design component of it is a really important part. And I think Duncan was had a really good point about often you see that organisations or SMBs, when they're small, are able to sort of manage that. As they get a bit bigger, then they can lose control of that, and then ultimately they get larger, able to invest more in that as well.
And just building on that, how would you say an SMB should decide if they need a brand refresh?
Yeah, I think that you could go out and do some competitor analysis and look what else is out there in the market. Have a look at what your competitors are doing. Also have a look at just what others in the industry are doing, whether they're competitors or in other markets as well. You can also just reach out to people as well that you may know who I think will be able to give you some advice on that as well, or engage some people who could do that on a professional level. But I think for a lot of people now, we obviously see so many marketing messages and brands presented to us that people start getting a sense of what resonates with them. If you think about why that resonates with you, and then start trying to apply some of that to how you build out your own brand design as well, you can get some benefit from that also.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. And Duncan, I did say I'd circle back on tools, and Adam just mentioned building, so that just reminded me. So in terms of tools and and businesses, I guess, deciding which tools to use, what are some of the things that they should consider when they're looking for some tools to help them in terms of creating that eye-catching content?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, and the design process has actually come a very long way in sort of a short period of time. I think not so long ago, when you look at design and branding, it very much required a lot of study, a lot of different businesses in order to actually acquire content, bring skills together, perhaps put copyright together. So I think if you look at the actual process itself, it's changed a lot. And so there are tools out there such as Canva, I'll put the plug in there, that brings all of that content together. It does bring those stills together. It brings that template together. And I think the thing that sort of stands out to me when evaluating tools is really that usability, right? In order to actually create that good, high impact, eye-catching content, a system has to be usable, right? It has to bring all those elements together seamlessly. It has to bring those templates together and really assist you in sort of guiding that content. I think usability seems to be the thing that stands out to me, because as I'm the first to admit, I'm not a professional designer. I certainly can't sit down and put together creative content myself, but I think with usable systems at my fingertips, it really does help bring that all together.
Okay, thanks, Duncan. And Adam, I will come back to you later on and ask you a couple of questions about tools. But before we do that, it obviously costs money for people to do these brand refreshes. And in order to make sure they've got the cash flow to support that, SMBs really need to manage their finances well. Jason, what do you sort of see as some of the biggest mistakes that an SMB makes around managing their finances?
Oh, that was a really slick segue there.
Well rehearsed.
But can I just add that I just loved Duncan's and Adam's real clear perspectives on design, because it really echoes some of our journey in building our brand. And if I were to add just a little bit to the end of that, it's just that getting cut through is so important. And one of the best ways to actually get that cut through with your brand is just to be yourself in so many ways. And people just want to relate to your product. So it's actually a lot of fun, and I just love hearing you guys talk about it. So thanks for that. But yes, on to cash flow. So the question was what some of the mistakes that businesses make around that.
Yes,
well,
what are some of the mistakes that they would make around like just managing their finances in general. So making sure they've got the cash flow, just managing them all together.
Well, the top three that come to mind for me, one would be not keeping good records. And we hear that also. I mean, we're in the financial space, but we're in personal finance. So we work with people to help them manage their personal incomes and expenses. But in this day and age, with the future of work, the gig economy, these things are kind of blurring. So we have people who are both managing their own finances, but also they've got a side hustle or they're folding in other bits of income into their lives. But regardless of whether or not you're managing a full-on SMB or if you're working in the gig economy, you must keep good records. And that is, if you're using an accounting platform, if you need to do that in order to file your annual books, do that. Otherwise, please seek help with an accountant. They're not too expensive. And on behalf of all the accountants that we've spoken to, I will say, please keep a record of all your receipts and your transactions. And sort of an angel sort of falls and loses their wings whenever someone walks into an accountant's office and puts down a stack of bank statements that they've got to work through. So, we live in the 21st century. All these things are now electronic. There's software out there that'll help you do that. So incomes, expenses, receipts, deductibles. The second one is just not seeking advice from an accountant, a mentor, peer. And the thing is, many people are going through very similar situations with their businesses. And I think a lot of people suffer in silence, and they probably could avoid making poor decisions if they would just, have a conversation with anyone. I'm sure Rosalyn would be very happy, from a legal perspective, to pick up the phone and just provide you a bit of advice that might save you months of heartache. So that's the second one. The third one is something that's very close to our heart because it's at the core of our product, and that is to have a forecast. And many people who budget for their businesses or budget personally are looking historically, and they're trying to understand what's happened in the past. But when the future is really uncertain, and it usually is for people who've got irregular incomes anyway, but in the era of COVID in particular, really important to have at least a 6 to 12 month projection of what you estimate your income is going to be, so that you can plan accordingly. And the last thing you want to do is to be caught unawares. And this is something that software can help you with, or an accountant can set up a spreadsheet for you. Very, very easy stuff to get bedded in.
Yeah, I think that irregular income point is really critical, especially, I'm assuming, Adam and Duncan's both customers and also your authors, your contributors probably face that, being freelancers themselves, in terms of that irregular income. I mean, during the COVID period, there's been a lot of increases in volume, et cetera, which is a positive, but how long is it going to go for, and what's going to happen in the future is obviously, potentially a challenge. So, you mentioned in your last point, Jason, around managing that irregular income. Is there any other tips around that irregular income sort of finance management that you wanted to add in as well to that?
Oh, was that a question for me? Sorry.
Yes.
Managing. I guess having an emergency fund for yourself and or your business, because you just never know when that might be an unexpected tax bill. Those are the worst, or I mean, I am a financially anxious person, so I want a ton of buckets and buffers around me to be able to tap into, and I'd advise most freelancers, SMBs to have something stashed away for a rainy day.
Yeah, that's definitely important, and some of those rainy days could be facing legal minefields, especially if someone decides to sue you because you've infringed their intellectual property rights.
Yeah.
Which makes Rosalyn's eyes, light up. So,
no, not light up. I wanted to jump in before because you said when's a good time to rebrand, and my response was going to be when you get a cease and desist letter because you're actually infringing.
And didn't you have someone who had that recently? Didn't you? We spoke about this the other week.
It happens that people, they run off. They get these brilliant ideas, and they have a trademark because they're going to sell diamond rings, and their trademark is diamonds, and they don't realize that somebody else, maybe in the same industry, has used that trademark before, and they get a cease and desist letter, and they're infringing because the other person has a registered trademark, or because it's a word that's descriptive of what they're offering. And, unfortunately, they then have to go. I've had 3 people this week, believe it or not, one that actually had a cease and desist letter, and we've had to rebrand her business. Another 3 that are actually looking to lodge trademarks, and I've had to say to them, look, we might have to lodge it as a logo, see how we go, because they've already spent like $200,000, $300,000 on collateral, product, packaging, design. So if they sort of come to someone like me early, or even sit down with a marketing guy and say, hey, this is the brand I'm thinking of, is it going to be something that's registerable? Then we can look and see what else is in the market, see if they're infringing, which is the first point. The second point is to look at if it's what we call distinctive in legal speak. So what that means is it a word that's unique? Is it a word that's going to actually allow consumers to remember your brand? Like PocketSmith is awesome because it's a great name for what they do. It's a really great play on words. Pocket, your wallet, your money. Smith, like they can craft it, they can manage it, they're experts. But it doesn't actually, is that what you were going for with your
His
brand?
heart's gushing.
Oh yeah, you're getting it.
Ticking all the right boxes there.
Yeah.
My goodness.
The thing is, if they'd gone out and gone, we're going to be called Finance Pro, like how many people would remember that? And how many people would say, oh, Finance Pro, now are we looking at Xero or MyOb or what software are we supposed to be using? Because it's not distinctive. It's simply a description of what they're offering. And so a lot of people think they're getting really clever because they come up with words like, for solar, and they're calling it blue sky. Like how many other people have done that? So you've got to think of a brand that's really distinctive, like PocketSmith, where it's almost a made up word. You can have it as a play on words, or you could call it, green dinosaur. But once you get that goodwill building up in your brand, it doesn't matter that it's not descriptive because people remember it. And so going back to what Adam and Duncan were saying before is that because it's distinctive and you're putting your own personality and your message to your customers in that name, that gives you the chance, straight away on day one, as soon as they hear about you, to build that rapport and that emotional connection. And so it all starts with the branding and the trademark and getting all of that right and making sure you can then register it once you've got the right one so that other people can't come and infringe it.
That's really good. And in terms of, look, I think Canva and also Envato, they both have unique names. So you've gone in alphabetical order there, guys, just to try and be equitable. I'll do reverse alphabetical next time. But, it's the same thing. They're very memorable. They're very unique. It's right on the point that you mentioned. And in terms of these businesses, that are thinking of these names and they're looking to grow globally, are there any other sort of, I guess, minefields that they need to be cautious of? We might focus on Australia because obviously you've got, Australian legal experience. That's, where you're focused. But if there is anything more global, that's fine as well. But is there anything else outside of that sort of IP protection that's, I guess, important when dealing with global businesses?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So there's obviously the global, trademark and branding protection, which can be done through WIPO, which is the World Intellectual Property Organization. Some countries are, members to that. And so you can kind of lodge one application and bring in a whole lot of countries so you can manage it that way. There's also, from a contractual point of view, if you're looking at getting distributors and other people in the market, to sell your goods, obviously because of COVID, people can't travel. So, you might have someone who's, selling this, amazing shampoo. They can't go over to salons and distributors overseas. So they're getting people online to, create those relationships, and then they're getting people on the ground over there to sell it. So, it's about having agreements that have restraints of trade, that give you ownership of the customer lists and the databases, and make sure that they're not going to, go off and develop a product that's similar to yours and call it, purple dinosaur instead of blue dinosaur. So it's just about, again, like thinking about your strategy. And then, how I like to work with people is you kind of workshop, where the touch points are in the business and where the risks are, and then just simply, hit them off one by one, in terms of highest risk and most important.
Thanks. That's some really, really, really valuable points, and hopefully the audience is taking some fast and furious notes here. We've got a question here for you, Adam, in fact, from the audience, which is, we've started a software house during COVID, and we've got a team of over 15 young individuals, including developers, designers, business development. Currently, we're exploring freelancing portals for getting work, which is taking time as we have new IDs. What other options can we explore to gain business, like creating themes and trying to sell them on Envato?
Yeah, sure. So there's a few things. Envato does a lot of different things in sort of the creative space. So we have one product, which is Envato Studio, which is for a freelance network where sounds like the person who asked this question would be able to go there and offer some of their skills, whether that's creating logos or building websites or creating apps or anything like that. and obviously we help attract customers and connect them with that talent. For one of Envato's other parts of its business around Envato Market and Envato Elements, we enable authors who create this content to then upload that content and make it available for sale. So if they go to envato.com, they can learn more about how to become an Envato author. An author is what we call a seller. And they're really, creatives from all around the world who are really passionate about high quality content, whether that's around creating WordPress themes or graphic templates or stock video or After Effects templates. They can then upload that, make that available for sale on Envato, and then we obviously have a really large volume and a global audience that come through and purchase those assets, and then the authors recognise the revenue from that. So we have thousands of authors from all around the world. Some of it do it as a side hustle. Some of them are earning significant sums of money and have built out large teams to support the products that they sell as well. So I'd encourage them to jump onto envato.com and have a look from there.
And I think you mentioned to me the other day you're about to hit a milestone, isn't it, for your payments to your authors? Is that right?
Yeah, we are, which we're really excited about. I think one of the reasons.
Share it, or is it?
Sorry,
you share it.
Yeah, we're getting close to reaching $1 billion in payouts to our authors, which we're excited. I think the company was sort of started, by creatives for creatives, with a view of being able to help people sort of do what they love from anywhere around the world and earn a living from that. So we're not quite there yet. We will be shortly, and I'm quite excited about hitting that milestone.
Great work. And if you don't mind, because we've also got Canva on the line, who also does a bit of helps creatives sell on the marketplace too. And I know the question was directed at Envato, but and there is slightly different flavor in terms of the two businesses. So you are catering to different audiences and different creators. But Duncan, is that something as well from your perspective, in terms of answering that question from Talia, that you wanted to share? It was just around, they're more creating themes, but what's the difference in terms of digital assets for you guys?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was actually going to bring up the sort of content angle when thinking about the legal minefield as well. I know that Rosalyn kind of talked about that brand infringement risk. I think also obviously the trademark risk, but also from a content perspective, when organisations and businesses are actually selecting that content, that's probably another legal minefield, right? Is the copyright on that content, the model releases on that content. And so that's where, I think platforms like Envato and Canva kind of step in to help provide solutions to those requirements and those needs. From a content creator standpoint, I think it's always best for content creators to stay really close to those trends and patterns that they're seeing in the marketplace. And the more that those content creators can be one step ahead of where those trends are going, the more likely they're going to get that content picked up and used when they do contribute to something like Canva or Envato and get that product and that content out there in market. It's often that content creators are being reactive to kind of what's going on and what people are searching for. But I think the ones who really take those big strides forward and those big steps forward are the ones who are able to try and get ahead and sort of see trends coming down the path and start to sort of proactively create that content. And also I think the shift in the type of content, right? I'm sure Envato's seen it as well, but I think still imagery was something that was certainly the main piece of content that was seen, distributed, used. But everyone's on their smartphones these days, so video is certainly the trend that we're seeing sort of come to the forefront now. And so, how can you get ahead of that video trend, and how can you actually start creating more and more of that content that's mobile friendly?
Yeah, that's really good. And in terms of video content, are people sort of seeing that being utilized by small businesses in their own world a lot more? Obviously, there's, what do we got here? TikTok and Instagram videos and so on and so forth. But do you guys see a lot, like you using it, like the small businesses that you work with, are they using it? Like, I'm opening up to the floor really for anyone want to jump in there?
Who's that one too?
Anyone want to jump in?
I'll jump in first. And I'll jump in first. I think that's certainly something we are seeing. I think we're seeing many various different organisations adopt new methods of communication, and I think if you look at the way that people have kind of shifted their communication for any number of businesses, right? I think I touched on earlier where we've seen what have been traditional face-to-face businesses all of a sudden shift to online methods of delivery and online methods of communication. They're embracing these new channels like Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat. And so when we talk about those platforms that help people or that are usable and help them create that content, I think that's a really powerful thing. So yeah, I think small businesses are certainly adapting to those new methods of communication and embracing the new tech, and really sort of creating that emotional connection with that new audience. So.
That's good. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Anyone else want to add about video?
Also, I just wanted to say, obviously, the smaller businesses, they've got limited budget. They don't have, thousands of dollars to throw at, a marketing developer to develop unique content just for them, for their business. And there's no need to reinvent the wheel when they have these amazing tools that are available to them. Like 8 years ago, you'd be having discussions with people saying, please don't Google and copy images because you're going to get yourself in trouble. But now no one does it because there's no need to. Like these, guys, like Envato and Canva are providing a fantastic resource, and the prices are really reasonable and they're achievable. So, certainly I think, and they're really pretty, like they're great to look at, and they range from, every kind of industry, every kind of color shade, all the different permutations. So I think there's real opportunity for businesses to look a lot bigger than they are and to not have to spend the money tailoring stuff because they don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, and talking about those tools a little bit more, like obviously you mentioned we've got some great tools here in Envato and Canva and PocketSmith. I'd love to hear from everyone around what are some of their favorite tools that they've seen out there. Obviously their own is number one, but outside of their own, what else would you say is a great tool? Who wants to start that one? Let's go with Adam.
Sure.
So you bought a house. Yeah.
I think for me, so this is probably not quite a specific tool, but I'm always really impressed by, I get asked that a lot from a marketing point of view. What are the marketing tools that I need to grow my business? If you look online, you can really find like some really good content that will build out a view of here are all the different things that you might want to consider to build out your marketing stack. So when we think about that breadth of work that SMBs might need to do, and you're just looking at marketing and think, God, I've got to think about SEO and email or CRM, social media management, market intelligence, project management, user research. Like you can now go out and see and find a range of different SaaS products that enable you to have a go at these things and learn a little bit about them. And to Rosalyn's point before, like these things are all affordable as well, and typically are paired with sort of some education resources as well to help people understand how to do that. So even I think if people don't end up saying, okay, well, I'm not going to be an email marketer, they can get a really good base level of understanding about how to do that and then say, great, I'll find another way to fill that gap or somebody else can do that. And I think that's what's really exciting about just the number of SaaS products and startups there are and companies that have kind of filled all of these gaps, that you can find ways to do all of these things in a relatively easy, lightweight way that are really affordable.
Cool. And Jason, we've got about 1.5 minutes to go. So Jason, if you've got a couple of recommendations.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna go super old school, and I still love Trello. So anyone who hasn't used Trello, you really need to jump on it, because the to-do list is so important and it's so flexible and it's got multiple permutations. You can share it with your team. It's got Kanban. You can use it for Agile. Our company has a massive crush on Doist at the moment, and they have just recently launched a Trello-like feature. So please check them out too. And Evernote, I can't stop using my Evernote. I just put everything in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Duncan.
I'll try and be very quick. I always like to look at systems that are going to give me a really good sort of idea of data and analytics of what I'm doing in the marketplace or what I'm doing in general, right? And so two tools that kind of spring to mind: Sprout Social from a social management perspective, just with regards to where am I getting the best return and what's getting the most traction. And then also being a sort of head of sales, I think about that long-term sort of customer lifecycle management. So it's all like HubSpot, a CRM like HubSpot is something that kind of springs to mind as well, just in order to sort of manage that long-term lifecycle.
Great. Thank you. Rosalyn, we won't get to you because of time. I think we're going to get cut off, unfortunately, but I know you love the 3 of these products here. So I'd like to thank all of you for being on the panel and for joining us today. Thank you again to the audience as well, and we hope you have enjoyed the rest of the Payoneer Beyond conference. Thank you all again so much, and we look forward to chatting with you in the future.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, team.